Alright, so I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I am actually going to go over my S13 very briefly, just some stuff that I've changed, but on top of that, I'm going to show my settings. My force feedback setting has changed a little bit since the update, just a personal preference thing, but something that you guys can try as well. And then I'm just going to show you guys a couple tricks that I use when setting up my cars as well. So let me jump right into this. I'm going to go to garage and dyno stand here. So right off the bat, you'll notice that my spring rates are just a hair different. I went down to a 10K or 100 spring if you want, whatever you'd like to call it. Something that I noticed with the update is that the suspension seems to be a little bit more accurately stiff on a setting per setting basis. So I went with a little bit softer spring in the front because it felt just a little bit too stiff, a little bit too light, a little bit too numb. If you don't know me or you don't know my tunes by now, you'll know that I like a lot of suspension travel, a lot of body movement. I like to be able to use the car's weight and stuff to manipulate where the car ends up during a turn, or through a section, if I need to snap a transition, or if I just want to float a transition, things like that. I really like to use the car's weight to manipulate that stuff, and on top of that, it just gives you a little bit more realistic feel to a certain extent, because you're going to feel that suspension travel in your wheel. When you really get used to the wheel and you get seasoned on it and stuff, you'll start to notice that you can feel all those bumps and those weight changes and stuff in your wheel, stuff that you normally feel in your butt in a real car. All that stuff's going to be coming through your wheel, so you get used to it. If you're new to the wheel, if you're not, you probably know what I'm talking about. Dampers, they're a little bit softer now as well. My fast dampers, I'm running the double stiffness on the rebound, just to keep it from decompressing a little bit too fast when I'm just driving normal and going over bumps and stuff like that. Going over to the regular dampers, they're a little bit softer now as well. Running a larger variance in the rear than I am the front. I like the front to decompress faster. It helps the weight shift back towards the rear of the car faster when I'm going from either coasting or from a braking scenario to back on throttle. Makes it to where the front end will decompress pretty quickly versus the neutral state or the compressed state that it was in before. The difference that I have as well, you'll notice in the front rebound and the rear bump, I have it to where the rear will compress a little bit faster than the front is going to decompress. This just makes it to where there's two separate motions, and it makes it a little bit more predictable when I'm stabbing back on throttle and stuff like that. A little bit more toe out in the front, personal preference. Some people like to run on the higher end of toe out. Some people like to run no toe out. I recommend running at least a couple tenths of toe out in the front, just to ensure that that front end is going to stay ahead of the rear and it's not going to try and snap oversteer on you in transitions and stuff. Running a bit less camber now. This is a much more neutral camber setting. It's going to give you a lot of better tire feel through your transitions and stuff like that, as well as it mixed with this higher amount of caster than some people normally run. It's actually lower than the old setup, but some people they will run around 5.5 degrees of caster at the camber setting that I'm running. I like to have a bit more camber rollover. This also gives me a heavier steering feel and a little bit more self-steer. This is a personal preference thing as well, but it also does affect some other things as well, such as suspension jacking and things which are simulated properly in this game. So it does add to some of that rear grip that this car has. The rear camber is at 0.0. I know some people, including myself on certain cars, you'll typically run a few tenths of a degree positive. You run a few tenths of a degree positive just to compensate for that rear squat that you're going to get under acceleration. I have it at 0 because I experimented with a lot of different rear camber settings, and this felt the most neutral to me and the most natural as far as it not trying to over-rotate off throttle, not trying to over-rotate on throttle, not trying to straighten up on throttle, things like that. So it does have about 0.4 of a degree negative camber in the rear, but I run a really soft rear tire pressure, as you'll see in the next slide. So it's going to compensate for that because that leading rear tire is going to roll under a little bit. So it's going to, in theory, have a pretty flat rolling surface on that rear tire when you're in drift. Roll bars haven't really changed a whole lot. I'm still running that, no roll bar in the rear. Gives me a lot of forward grip. Helps me with being able to control the weight shifting and stuff like that in the rear. It makes the car more prone to some more understeer aimed setup. And with drifting, the more understeer that you have naturally tuned into the car will typically yield more grip in drift, because you're fighting the car wanting to straighten up in theory versus it trying to constantly oversteer and continue rotating. So you'll notice, with my setup on this car and, with cars that I'm going to release in the future, if you drive them around normal, they're going to have a ton of understeer. And that is because they're going to yield a ton of grip in drift, because you're going to be trying to almost fight the car wanting to straighten up when you're in drift versus it just constantly trying to rotate. That's where that speed is going to come from and stuff like that as well. So these cars are, if you're interested in that realm, are going to be competitive almost out of the box, besides, tweaking a few things that are going to fit your personal preference. You'll notice that I run a lower percentage of Ackerman. I like that amount of gain that I have as I go towards lock, especially with this trailing wheel. A really important thing in drifting versus regular driving is when you are in drift, in regards to physics and the way everything happens, your car is going to be pivoting around that inside tire. So if you have some toe gain as you move towards lock, this is going to yield that you have less lock on this trailing wheel as you do on your lead wheel. This is going to encourage the car to dive towards the inside of the turn, versus trying to push wide. If there's a lot of people that like to run 90%, 100%. I have nothing wrong with that. That fits their personal preference. It's totally fine. But you will notice, if you take this setup and just bump up to 100% Ackerman, the car is not going to try and dive down into a corner, and you're not going to be able to stay on throttle as much. On top of the fact that it's not, in my personal opinion, it's not going to feel as natural to you as far as floating through those transitions and back and forth and the front end catching the car and stuff like that. So personal preference, you can raise the Ackerman if you want to. You can lower the Ackerman. I'm not going to publicly shame you for it, but I don't recommend going less than 50%. You're getting to the realm of it being unrealistic as far as how much gain you're going to get. And you're going to get into that anti-spin realm almost. Jump over to the wheels category. This really hasn't changed. The only thing that you're going to notice is that right now it has a 285 on the rear. That is just because I was running a comp the other day with a buddy of mine. His name's I'm Canine. You can find him on Twitch. He's a super great guy. But you can literally taste this exact setup, and you can just drop it down to the 265 if you want a little bit less grip, a little bit more oversteer proneness. Makes it a little bit easier to chase the average quantity of people that you're going to find in public lobbies and stuff like that. It's not going to be that same kind of like full tilt grip focused that you're going to find in a comp car and stuff like that. On the 285, this car is an absolute rocket. I love it. It's super fun. Tire pressures are the same, still on 100 adhesion. On the new update, the updated tire physics are absolutely phenomenal. It feels like I'm actually driving on a rubber tire now. As I tell a lot of people, it doesn't feel like I'm driving on a plastic barrel. So there's a lot of feel, a lot of road feedback, a lot of suspension feedback that I'm getting from the tire sidewall compressing and stuff like that at those lower pressures. Other thing you'll notice is the tire profile might be higher than the old setup. It might not be. But when I get into my settings, you'll notice that I'm running one click higher on my force feedback, so I'm running 0.5 now instead of 0.4. I enjoyed the increased weight. It kind of added to that realism aspect, and it also, you know, increased the feedback that I get from the suspension and the road and stuff like that. But you have to compensate for that because you are going to get oscillation if you don't, you know, kind of compensate in the tune with that and kind of decrease some of that feedback. So, you know, softer tire pressures in the front, higher sidewall in the front to give, you know, the tire a little bit more give and more rollover, as well as lower caster settings. This one, I have virtually no oscillation at all with this exact setup on 0.5 on my TMX. You know, and I don't know how it's going to translate to Logitechs and stuff like that with the motor setups being different in those wheels. But, you know, if you notice that you do get some oscillation and stuff on, say, a G920 or something like that, you can run your, you know, your 0.4 force feedback if you want to. You can lower the front tire pressure. You can lower the front caster down to, you know, like 5.5, 5. But keep in mind that, you know, when you lower that caster, it will change some of the aspects of the setup as well. So you're not going to get the same amount of self-steer, the same amount of front bite and stuff at certain points in the steering lock. Jump over to the engine. This is the biggest difference. I went from 450 up to 600. I just wanted a little bit more of the full tilt build Peppy SR setup, running, you know, the lower 8200 RPM limiter. You know, it's not running some crazy like 85, 8800 limiter. Still got the torque band pretty low, so it's got a lot of low end feedback. It's not, you know, a super high rev, high end rev range response, you know, with a really boggy low end. It's a pretty neutral and consistent rev range that it stays in. You can rev it down pretty low and still be able to jump the revs back up without really having a clutch kick or anything too much. The horsepower helps with that as well. Jump over to the transmission. Nothing's changed here. I'm still running that 0.85 in the rear that you're going to find in some real LSDs. Still running the 410 rear. You know, same thing. You're going to find that in some real SDs. You know, Kaz, Tomei, stuff like that. Running standard SR20 gear ratios, the 5-speed gear ratios. You can tweak these if you want to. If you want to run, you know, same sequential gear ratios and you know, Winter's quick change, you know, rear end gear ratios and stuff like that, you totally can. Stuff that you can play with the car. The braking, this is personal preference. You know, I like a lower tire or a lower brake pressure. I like my bias around 70%, so I don't have too much brake pressure in the front, and adversely too little pressure in the rear. The way I have this brake set up, it makes it pretty consistent to the point that I can stay on throttle full tilt and just play with my left foot brake without having to worry about the car trying to either dive straight ahead or over rotate when I get on the brakes and stuff like that. But it's something that you can play with as well. There's people that have different preferences for the brake setup. But just remember that when you do change things, everything kind of meshes together. When you change one thing, you might be affecting something else that has to be changed as well. So everything is really intermingled as far as this setup. You know, you change the alignment and it's going to change the way you might need a suspension setting, stuff like that. I want to talk about a couple little tricks real quick though. When you are going through these tunes and, you know, you're trying to work on setting up your own car and stuff like that. First thing, just a little trick that I do to rotate the car around here. Get that rear camber setting. You want to try and get as flat of a rear tire as possible to have the maximum amount of feedback out of the rear, to not have too loose of a rear on your car, things like that. So obviously depending on your spring rate and stuff like that, it's gonna be, you know, determinant on how much squat you have in the rear. This is a pretty wrong button. This is a pretty soft rear end on this car, and it has, you know, a middle ground, you know, spring length, so it's gonna have some squat. So what I'll do is I'll go over here. I will find whatever spring length I want. You know, I'll get my ride height and everything set. I'll get my spring rates right. I'll get my spring length right. And I'll go over here and I'll click down twice on my spring length. That's going to dynamically change your camber setting in the tuning menu. This is going to simulate your squat that you're going to get under acceleration. So if you look at it, it's now at -0.5 degree. So if you are, you know, running a lot of squat, you can do this, and then you can take that camber, zero it out, then jump back over. Zero it out here just so I can show you guys. You know, zero it out, jump back over, put that back up to that 12 centimeters. Now you see that you will, in essence, need 0.5 degree of positive rear camber to have a flat tire, a zeroed out camber rear end under compression. I'm gonna put it back to how I had it here. Because I did play with the rear camber setting a lot, and I liked the way this felt at zero, under a resting state. It didn't have too much oversteer, didn't have too much understeer, has plenty of grip, both on decompression and compression, you know, going through transitions or mid-turn, things like that. Another trick, really quick while we're here, working on, you know, if you're really hard pressed on trying to get that flat tire at a normal amount of rotation. If you look at my wheel here, your normal range of steering lock that you're going to be in, if you're running 900, is one full turn, like I have it right now. So you're going to be working this way and this way. This is your range that you're going to be in drift. So, way to simulate that, you go over to your steering angle, drop your steering angle all the way down. It's going to put it at 45 degrees. Then you're going to go over to your caster setting, and you're going to play with your caster until that tire is flat on the ground. Then, we'll do that now, just to show you. Just put it at 5. It's decently flat. Then, go back over here, jump your angle back up, boom, you're good. That 45 degrees is going to be a general area of the amount of lock that you're going to have in drift. You're not going to be a full lock all the time, so you don't want your tire to be, you know, flat at full lock. You want it to be flat at your average amount of steering lock that you're going to have. And then you want that positive camber rollover when you get towards lock to help the front end push back and help your steering push back and not, you know, fall over on itself. Alright, so jump out of here. Let me go over to my settings real quick. Run clutch. Run no wheel assist. Everybody should know that by now. Steering wheel angle is 900 degrees. It's calibrated to 1000, 1000. Force feedback is 0.5. Deadzone 0. Linearity is 1. You always want these to be like this. You don't want a dead zone in your steering, and you don't want your linearity to be any less than 1. That's going to change how responsive your steering is at small amounts of input versus large amounts of input. You want it at 1 to keep it to where it is a linear steering response no matter how much rotation you're at. Use 1 for the linearity for my accelerator and my braking to get the full range out of it. Your clutch is kind of personal preference based on where your engagement's at in your real car. If you have a real car that you drive around in real life that's manual. I have it at 0.2 because it's pretty close to the engagement point of my real car. But yeah, that's it. That's my new S13. It's on the new update. The new update is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love the new S13 model. It made me fall in love with this car even more. It's got the fantastic Origin kit. It's got the older Origin bumpers that were already in the game. They're updated, as you can see on this setup. I'm not running the new Origin line that they just put in the game. I'm running just the kind of the OG Origin bumpers. I like the clean, smooth look of it, but the new model is absolutely fantastic. CarX did a great job updating the physics and the tire model again. They feel absolutely phenomenal. Really encourage you guys to give this car a try right out of the box. Don't change anything on it. Go to West Coast or something, you know, an open track or whatever. Take you, you know, 5-10 laps on it. Really get a feel for the car. Then, you know, absolutely go ahead and go in, you know, maybe tweak a couple things that, you know, are going to fit your driving style and your driving preference more. But like I said, I really encourage you guys to drive it right out of the box. It's an absolute monster. It's a rocket. It's got tons of grip, but it's also had tons of control as well. You know, you can follow people on 90s sometimes if you need to. I have in public lobbies and stuff. So yeah, super fun car. I really hope you guys enjoy it. I absolutely love this thing. Keep your eyes peeled. I've got some new cars coming out. One of those being the new Viper. Really got some Dean Carney vibes going on with that car. That car is an absolute monster, and it's a handful. I'm not running, you know, a sub 1,000 horsepower Viper on here. You know, I went full tilt with it. It's running like 1,215 horsepower. It's on a 285. It's got some really soft suspension. It's got a ton of grip, a ton of control. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy that one as well when I get that one released. But yeah, just keep your eyes peeled. I've got some new tunes coming out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this one, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I appreciate you stopping by. Please feel free, drop a comment below. Let me know how you feel about the car. Let me know the things that you changed on the car that, you know, kind of fit your driving style and stuff. And feel free to share it with your friends. Share away. Absolutely copy that link. Hit the share button, whatever you want to do. Tell everybody about it. Give it a like. You know, drop a sub as well. I try and drop videos once a week, hopefully. You know, but I do have a super busy life outside of this. So yeah, I appreciate every one of you. I appreciate the people that are sub to me and that do follow me and that do give me the feedback that I do. You guys are the reason that I keep doing this. I'm working on getting the internet switched over, so I'm hoping I'm going to be back on Twitch as well. That's where this video came from. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, I hope to see you guys back on Twitch soon as well. Start doing some co-streams and stuff, hanging out with GD Media, Turbo Moose. Congrats to him for his 1,000 subs on YouTube. Doc Drift, he's climbing up there as well. I think he's almost to 700 subs. Hanging out with I'm K9, stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, I appreciate you guys stopping by. I really hope you enjoy the car and have a super awesome day. Keep it fun, guys.